Why don't we talk a little bit about policy and things that are on the near and medium-term horizon that you think have real resonance to this topic?
I mean, climate is obviously the biggest one, and the beauty in some ways of the climate issue, which is the way to put it, but is the fact that it is merging energy and environment, and that a good energy policy, which we should have had for a variety of economic and national security and just pollution, I mean, you name it, all those reasons, never really had a chance because I think society tends to go towards the big forces that can do more. It's sort of like the way, forgive me, I used to be in public works side of thing and took a city agency from burying garbage to the biggest recycling and waste reduction program, or second biggest in the country, and there was just a mindset that was really hard to get over, because it's simpler if you have a few big things, or if it's really big and you're all doing the same thing. It's just easier for the mind to understand, particularly a mind of the veteran or the boomer sort of era. So the kind of integrated resource planning and myriad forces and decisions of consumers and lots of different businesses, which a younger generation is much more comfortable with, this Washington mindset, the old guard doesn't quite get, and the lobbyists there, and the sort of old business. So it's kind of hard for people to see. And by hammering on the fact that energy security is so important and leading with that, and talking about all the jobs there are in, real solutions right here, jobs here now on a competitive level, and painting the picture and telling the stories, I think has this incredible merger of good in economic and environmental policy to deal with the climate crisis, which wouldn't have happened if people weren't talking about jobs and energy. If it was just climate and we're going to try and regulate it the way we traditionally did it, it would be a flash in the pan. Maybe for a year there'd be a wave, but I think that linkage of those two is really important. The other issue, and this could be a whole dialogue, so I just want to put it out there to think about for businesses in general, is water. People talk about water. There just isn't enough water. And the way water policy is done in California, and I am not sort of an anti-ag person because I like to eat, and I think that I think that they're not evil polluters. They're people trying to raise food as a business. We need them. We need it here, etc. But there is the politics of California have made it so that it is very hard to get rational water planning, for example, in ag in ways that would be possible compared to the incredible energy efficiency standards and approach that California's taken over the last 30 years. That hasn't happened in water. And the bill is coming due, and that's an issue where the general business community should be speaking up, because it's their bills and their ability to expand business, etc. That's happening because we haven't taken on water.
Elliott, when we spoke before the panel, you were mentioning the watershed moment you believe to be watershed moment being AB 32. Maybe you could talk a bit about that, as you're very passionate about that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, AB 32 was, I assume you all know about AB 32. It's still the only mandatory cap on CO2 emissions when it's implemented in 2012, and was hopefully going to be a model for the United States. But I believe that we're not going to get anywhere close to AB 32 on a national level, at least on this round. But what it did, it helped to galvanize and demonstrate there is a whole cadre. There is this divide in the business community. And jump over to something else that Felicia talked about, and she mentioned essentially peak water. I don't know if you know. Well, actually, there's a book written by an acquaintance of ours by the name of Richard Heinberg, who's a peak oil scholar. Well, his latest book is called Peak Everything. And that's what we're really facing. Peak atmosphere, it's called climate change. Peak water, peak oil. Peak oil. I have spent some time on peak oil. I've spent some time on climate, and I actually tried to put the two together in people's minds, because the answer to both is exactly what Felicia's talking about. The opportunities that we are facing are about as large as the scale of the challenges we're facing. And the opportunity to create good jobs, like we've talked about around AB 32, huge investment opportunities for those who have capital to invest, huge training opportunities for everybody in this country, and we are just not embracing it anywhere near as we should have been labeled as consumers for too long. We need to take off our consumer hat and put on our citizen hat and engage in these public policies that have every bit to do with your life. And I think especially business people have been disinclined to engage in public policy, thinking that's for policy wonks or that's for other people to do. Where in reality, who do we think owns the public policy making apparatus in this country? It's business. It's businesses that tend to have a narrow, short-term profit maximization mindset above all.
Okay, I'm going to ask one last question, and then we're going to allow ample time for questions from the audience. And I think I'm trying to sum up everything we've talked about and maybe inspire some people in the room to think about their own businesses and where they intersect with the environment. And that is, we mentioned several people tonight that are true leaders in business, environmental, sustainability. Van Jones, Ray Anderson of Interface Carpets. I mean, these are people that are mission-driven to the core. They're advocates for the very being of what their business or organization stands for, and they're public about it. And they put a human face on the cause, and I think they educate a lot of people and can convert a lot of people to come along. And we talked about some of the challenges that not everybody across the United States representative, for example, represented by people in this room. We need a lot more visibility and education, and you need to make sustainability cool. It needs to be accessible. So that said, what do you all feel is the role of the executive, and that could be of a corporation, be of a one-person business, to get out and lead and be a thought leader and to be an articulate spokesperson for their environmental or social cause?
I think that's what the role of a leader is to lead. It obviously brings a company, small, mid-size, or large, along this road much more quickly than if it comes from the bottom up. But I remember having breakfast with Ray Anderson a couple of years ago, and I said, Ray, how many Ray Andersons are there in the corporate world, in the $1 billion plus? Mm-hmm. And he couldn't even fill all of his fingers on one hand. Now it's probably changed somewhat. You can probably count them on two hands now. Again, it moves more quickly if it comes from the top, if it's really embraced, but it is not the only way to do it. And you will find more of the small and mid-sized companies that get it and move on it more quickly than the large companies.
Business schools actually providing a training ground for perspectives that will help various levels in the companies line up around a CEO, but courage is important.
Absolutely. Make a plug for an MBA program right here that Elisa goes to and that Nikki graduated from, called the Presidio School of Management. I've been on the board for about 4 or 5 years. And as a board member, I will tell you, we are all driven to create, and I hate to use a military metaphor, but I will, but to create an army of young, highly educated business people who are devoted to getting into business, into large corporations, into mid-sized and small companies to start their own companies, and really bring the mindset, this massive change called sustainability, into all companies that we can get our hands on. So it's one of the most inspiring and inspired educational institutions that I've been to, that I've been involved with. So if you've got a job opening and you want somebody like that, they're there.
Thank you so much. Education is one of the key values of Eco Tuesday, and to bring educational experiences to our participants, and you all did exactly that tonight. And I'm very grateful for all the time and effort you put into talking with us on the phone and even coming here tonight. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Thank you.